Well, hello. Thanks so much for joining again. We're back with another webinar, with another set of things to talk about, another set of exciting ideas that I would love to share with you. And this time we are doing something different. We're trying to be a little bit deeper with the insights that we share with you by sharing exactly why they work and potentially also psychological principles. So I have more than 20 items to share with you. And without further ado, I would love to get into it immediately. Now, before we begin, if you have any questions while I'm speaking, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A section. I would love to take them if I can while I'm speaking. It's just me. That's how we do it here. I get on a webinar every month, and we, as a company, run about 10,000 experiments a year. So we have a lot of data and a lot of insights on what works and what doesn't work, why people leave a site, what makes your customers essentially drop off at different parts of their journey. And so my job is to distill all of that down to a few insights that you can immediately implement. And we've essentially been fortunate enough to garner a fairly loyal fan base of this webinar, which means people that join every week, and then a few people get added every week as well. So yeah, thanks so much for continuing to subscribe to our newsletter, and thanks so much for joining us today. This webinar is recorded, but it does not go live anywhere for several weeks. We have a backlog that we're trying to get through. So I recommend that you stick around till the end so that I can make sure that I walk you through enough stuff, enough stuff. Also, AI note takers and recorders are not permitted into the room. So if you were planning on using one, I'm sorry. However, a summary of the event will be shared afterwards. And if you have any questions, you can also just DM me afterwards, and I'm happy to address any specific things that you want to maybe discuss about your respective online stores or your businesses. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, there are two things that stood out that might stand out here. The first is underrated. So some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is going to be pretty straightforward, basic stuff. But it's underrated because a lot of companies either do it wrong or they just do it like a checklist item. So there's not enough thought that goes into implementing something. The other thing is 8-figure e-commerce store. So whether you're an aspiring 8-figure store or an already 8-figure store, doesn't really matter. I think the important piece is that these are for stores that are slightly sizable, that have enough traffic. So we're not going to solve demand gen for you. We're going to solve converting the demand that you already have, converting the paid traffic, organic traffic, and all other forms of traffic that you already drive to your site. All right. So let's jump in. We'll begin with the first one and then go from there. They are organized in no particular order, but I promise that I have some very interesting insights to share with you. Right. So when you look at the various things that really, really matter in the world of marketing, copy is, I think for me, it's the most important, but I think it's one of the most important. And so one of the things that I'm recommending here is that you pay some attention to the effort reward heuristic, which means that when you are expecting someone to click on something, you are asking for a small commitment. For example, when you want them to click on shop now, you are essentially asking them to commit to shopping now, right? So really simple. But then that's a commitment and there's some effort involved. And is the reward big enough? Do I really want to shop? Is the question that they are essentially trying to subconsciously answer in their mind. And if you want to make that easy for them, if you want to make answering that question easy for them, the best way to do that is to make this effort reward heuristic a little bit more easier to consume. So actions that are favorable, low on effort versus high on reward. So for example, in this case, we're talking about just one scoop and there's so much value that you would get. So this example, the image says this in the form of a product, but I think this applies in the form of call to actions as well. So instead of shop now, you could, like, for example, Apple uses compare now instead of buy now a lot because Apple wants you to take your time thinking through your purchase, thereby increasing the time you spend looking at the product and reading more details, thereby also consuming all of the different creative adjectives they use to explain simple features in their products. So the thing is, compare now is a lower commitment than buy now. Similarly, you could also use other things like explore options, shop the look sort of stuff. So that allows you to lower the psychological effort that goes into clicking or picking a CTA, but increase the reward they get from it because they're taken to a collection of products. And hopefully you all have great products to sell at great prices that people are going to love. So that, of course, you need that even if you want to have a small business. The next one is, how to kind of convert loyalists. One of the metrics that I feel that businesses don't track closely enough is lifetime value of a customer, LTV. And the reason I say that is also because it's not optimized for in an obsessive way. The thing is that any brand has loyalists, and these are the people who will also, they are also in the language of Seth Godin called sneezers. These are people who spread your brand, like virus. And so you want to make sure that they continue to stay loyal. And what you want to essentially try and do is create some kind of scarcity even for your loyalists. That's one thing that I feel most brands don't learn from larger brands like Rolex and Porsche and so on and so forth. So, for example, a Rolex will make you, if you love Rolex, they'll make you buy, a Lady Datejust, then an Oyster Perpetual, then maybe another Oyster Perpetual for yourself. But if you want to buy, more exclusive Rolex like a Daytona or something like that, they would take forever to let you come to that level. And that in turn is A, making you buy more, but B, it is also making you an even staunch loyalist of the brand, because the more you will own of that brand, the more you will defend it and stand by it. So think about it that way. I feel that enough brands don't use scarcity on their most loyal customers. It works wonders if you can do it by creating specific collections or categories for your loyal customers. It would go a long way. The next one I want to talk about is framing effect. Now, this is very interesting. It's really about how you want to talk about the negatives and the positive in a very tactical way. So the example that I've used here in text is imagining a medical treatments, right? So let's say you were signing up for a medical treatment and I said, hey, you know what? This treatment has a 90% survival rate. Versus if I said that it has a 90% mortality rate. Now the difference is massive, right? And that's something that happened to us during COVID as well. We used to first think, hey, you know what? This thing has a 2% chance of somebody dying, but it has a 98% chance you're going to make it. And so the other ways in which people would spin that metric is 2 in 100 or 1 in 100. And so that makes you feel like something's either larger than it is or smaller than it is. And so what GrindPods is doing here in this image, if you really see, is there's just two simple things. It's the fact that they have free shipping, and they can and you can compost those pods, because one of the, I don't know if you use Nespresso. I used to use Nespresso, and it feels really bad when you're throwing like those 10 or 15 pods in the trash, and you feel like you are to blame for a lot of the plastic and aluminum and all of that trash in the world. So it was something that was on top of people's minds. And I think what they've done here is not only have they affirmed the positive value here, which is free shipping, home compostable, but also that if you pick the other option, it's not only is it more expensive, it is also no free shipping, and it is also non-compostable. So you're really getting ripped off. So framing effect, the way you frame things really matter. I think this goes a long way for your product descriptions, for comparisons if you're doing that on your website. Also your product name. I think people generally don't spend that much time thinking through. For example, if you just look at the three descriptions here, it's, small descriptions here. It is for 30 home compostable coffee pods, a free refillable 10 and 22% off your first order, right? So much packed into a simple sentence. And then, of course, they're trying to, just detract you or kind of pull you away from the other option, which 30 non-compostable aluminum coffee pods, billions of which end up in landfills yearly. So I think we all know that which one feels better. I think we skipped one. Okay, so number 4 is, bringing an easy filtering system. So essentially what you want to really do is, instead of letting people take the traditional journey into your site of using the drop-down menu in the category, or even going for search, which then ends up taking them to 60, 70, 80 products, you are better off trying to do some very easy filtration early on in the journey. And that allows you to let people into just a few selection of products. So I don't think enough businesses put enough time and effort in narrowing the customer down, the average customer down, into a few things. And it's not necessary that you do this only on the homepage. It's actually equally important that you do it on your product pages. And the reason it is equally important is because a lot of your traffic is actually entering from the product page. So if somebody lands up on a t-shirt and they're looking at it, it makes a lot of sense to immediately ask them, hey, what are you looking for? I'm looking for slim fit t-shirts or oversized t-shirts for men, right? And then so you just let them pick that from the product section down below. Not something you're looking for, pick one of the options below. And so you've got oversized men, oversized women, slim fit men, slim fit women, and they pick one, and then you take them to the top 5 oversized t-shirts for men, and you've narrowed them down and hooked them with just that information. So an easy filtration helps with decision shortcuts, and you're just kind of making life easy for the customer. The next one is choice paradox. This is something we've all obviously seen. You're just simplifying the decision making by offering limited choices. This is extremely important again. And Amazon does this a lot. It does the opposite of this rather, where it recommends too many options, right? So there is like the variety and kind of volume of inventory is Amazon's play. And so when you are trying to shop for, let's say you're trying to shop for a phone cover, if you search for iPhone 14 Pro or 15 Pro phone covers, I think Amazon would have 200,000 options. And so Amazon obviously wants you to filter and do all of that, but it shows you the most accurately priced, best-selling, highest-rated products right on top, of course, after the ads. But I want you to think about it a little bit differently. You're not Amazon. And so you want to make sure that you're making decision-making easy and fast. And so instead of recommending 20, 25, 40 products, I strongly recommend that you just suggest one or two. You keep the choices to the minimum and make life easy, right? Instead of when you are trying to, maybe in the case of fashion, if you're trying to show a t-shirt or a shirt, instead of showing them 4 shirt options, complete the look with 7 pant options, followed by accessories, caps, all kinds of things, you're just doing too much. Why not just show one that goes really well and is lower priced than the product they're originally buying? For example, with a shirt, no need to sell a short. Try and sell a cap, try and sell a muffler. And so I would want you to apply that psychology on whichever industry you're from. I know we have about 20 different industries on the call today, including health supplements and all kinds of things. But my limited point being here is simplify the decision-making process and reduce the stakes that people are essentially running with. Yes, I will be sharing the presentation to refer back to. These examples are great, and we will probably convert them into some kind of a presentation and send it over, but it won't happen immediately after. So that's something to think about. All right. Now, bundling. I think bundling is really a simple one. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but what I wanted to make sure that I bring up is the anchoring effect. And so why I say anchoring is essentially when you share, the first piece of information that you share with your potential customer anchors the rest of their experience on the site. So if you show them a $40 t-shirt, you're going to find it very hard to then try and upsell them on something that is more expensive. That same thing applies for bundling. And so I would recommend that you anchor the customer on a bigger bundle to sell smaller ones, and then so on and so forth. This works, for example, with real estate a lot. So when you're trying to buy a house, the first price that is given to you is extremely, extremely important. And so depending on what part of the world you're from, you're either quoted really high or quoted slightly high, and so on and so forth. For example, one interesting real estate market I was recently learning about is the Australian real estate market, which is very gruesome. It's very competitive. And so most houses go for auction. And so auctioning is super interesting. So I recommend you check out YouTube videos for Australian house auctions. I think you're going to be pretty impressed with what you see. Running a warehouse sale. So the reason he brought this in is there are two real reasons we wanted to keep this idea into for discussion today. The first is I feel sale and clearance is the most overused tactic or method of trying to get your customers to convert. Right? At the end of the day, you do the sale so that people feel excited about prices, they see more value. People who are already on your list come back and buy. That's the reason you do sale. But the thing is, everybody else also does a sale. And so unless you have a very well differentiated brand which has a lot of appeal, sale loses its meaning because you're at the end of the day competing. So there are two things I want you to do. The first is position the sale a little bit better. In this case, for example, it is positioned like a warehouse sale. So it's a little bit different. And it's purely for slow-moving items. So Nike, for example, does sale. And they generally would be selling their duffel bags and beanies and all of the other stuff that Nike doesn't really sell that much, right? So you would never see an Air Force One. You would never see your Jordan t-shirts, etc. on sale. But you would still see a sale, and it's Nike. So, of course, they have less problems to solve than me and you. And so what's really important is that you try and position your sale a little bit better. That's point number one, and I'll give you more ideas for that as we go. And the second thing is try and avoid inattentional blindness. What that really means is when somebody lands on your site, you have a hello bar saying free shipping. You have a navigation bar talking about different categories, followed by clearance, and then a huge banner that says sale, followed by bestsellers, followed by recommendations, then the cognitive load on the customer is already very high. So if you're going to place a warehouse sale like this right on top somewhere, it's going to get missed. That is an attentional blindness because you don't have their attention, or their attention is already too divided. So I recommend you bring this warehouse sale in for customers that are already giving you their extra minute. Park it somewhere down below, maybe at the third or fourth fold of your collection, or maybe under a product page. And what that does for you is only the highest intent customers go there, and give them a crazy discount, try and convert them. So I think you have to use this tactic a little bit better, but there are two takeaways. One is don't do something that creates inattentional blindness, which essentially makes it harder for people to notice something you want them to notice. And second, position your sale a little bit better and a little bit differently. Founders notes. I think this is extremely, extremely important. If you're selling products that you've sourced or created yourself, I feel customers deserve to know the creators. And that goes an extremely long way. This is by far the best way to create authority and trust. And so for your best-selling products or your high-traction product pages, I recommend that you put your picture, put a small note of why you created what you created, maybe even a small story of your brand. Try and talk about the history, maybe where you source your products from. Maybe you're trying to get them assembled in India. You're trying to bring them in from China. Talk about ethics. Talk about anything that truly matters to you and makes you look like an authentic store trying to sell things for a living. There's nothing that travels far and wide, more far and wide than an actual human trying to emphasize on the value they're trying to add. Moving on, a better place to buy. So I think the thing is that apps are not for everyone. So if you don't have an app, I don't recommend getting one. It's a decision that has to be really calculated and then taken. But if you do have an app, here is an easy plug that makes you get more app downloads. It's very simple. It's to plug your app, not when people find you. Generally, we see, hey, download the app and get a 10% off. Let's not do that. Instead, try and convert people on the app. So when you have people that are going further into the funnel, they're on the product page or they're adding product to the cart, that's when you can just tell them that if you want easy returns, you should be shopping on the app, because you're trying to get them to be a loyal shopper from the first transaction itself. You can also do this for the second order customer. You can do free shipping for all app orders. So app exclusive offers, which are not discounts, because the problem with doing app only discounts is that people who are extremely high intent and were anyways going to give you full price will just download the app and give you full price. So you have to add a perk that does not break the bank for you while adding a lot of perceived value for the customer and makes it worth their while to download the app and take it to the next level. Super localized product recommendations. This is something that we have done for a lot of our customers. We have a recommendation engine that is live on more than 200 sites. And so we do this a lot. We pick up the IP wherever it is available, and we are able to figure out where somebody is from and then show them recommendations for what sells best in their area. This creates what we call confirmation bias, which means we just try and make it look like they're not the only ones doing something, and that goes a really long way. A tiered site-wide sale, very simple. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but the really important thing you're doing here is you're creating a really high discount level for stuff that doesn't sell too well. And then you are tiering those discounts down. So your low sale, low appeal product is going to be, hey, up to 80% off or whatever you want to call it. So in this case, the Impact Whey Protein has a 50% off for a selected range, right? And 35% off on everything else, 25% off on the bestsellers, 15% off on accessories, right? And so you've created these tiers, and then you can do something more interesting with it, which I'll come to in a second. But generally speaking, what you're trying to do is creating some kind of price differentiation and creating some kind of urgency, when you're trying to do this. Information gaps. This is, I think, by far the most important marketing knowledge, hack, trick, marketing psychology suggestion that I have ever received and I will ever give, is that the number one goal of marketing is to give all information -3, -4 pieces of information at all times. A marketing's job is to lead people on to the next step, and then to the next step, and then to the next step. And so if you reveal everything at once, you are nothing but a flyer, a boring flyer that nobody really reads. And so the strong recommendation that I have for you is do not give the customer all of the information. So in this case, for example, you have a bicycle and you have got plus icon. So it's only when you hover on it is when you see the information for what it means. What that does for you is it keeps people with you. They spend a few minutes looking at the product. They spend a few minutes absorbing this information, and then you can keep leading them on to the next step. So the idea is the distance between what shoppers already know and what they want to know has to be leveraged smartly. And so you have to infuse anticipation. You have to make sure that discovery is experiential. And I think even the most basic businesses that sell t-shirts, if you were selling a black t-shirt like this one, a really simple one, you could still do this by just adding a plus button and talking about the stitching that goes in, or maybe the material, which is 98% or 99% cotton, right? So I think this is a tool that everybody can use. Out of stock pages are often ignored. They are also the highest bounce. They are the place where you lose a lot of customers. A lot of your great products, if you're a very high selling brand, are often out of stock, and so that creates another issue. So what I recommend you do is leverage out of stock pages to collect information and to recommend products that matter. So in this case, for example, get notified, etc. But also, this is where you are essentially, normally in a product page, people are entering the page with the aim to decide to buy or not. But you've just taken them out of that mindset and you've put them in a mindset of, hey, it's not available, what next? And so what you want to do is leverage that very smartly. So there are two suggestions I can give you. One is, of course, capture their information and do that. The second thing you can try and do is also ask them if they're okay to pre-order, and if they're okay to give their details so that we can call them and place the order. Right? If your product is valuable enough for you to go through that effort of calling them, I strongly recommend it, because I think relationship building wise, it works super, super well. Right. So the next is recommending single bestseller to convey social proof. So I think this is again similar to what I said earlier. Do not recommend too much. So in this case, what you're trying to do is giving the shoppers a very clear choice that is extremely awarded, your best absolute single recommendation, right? And so what that creates is something called a bandwagon effect. So what you're doing is you're just reducing choice paralysis. You are just showing the consumer just one thing which you truly, truly recommend, right? So Peak Design, for example, is a company that sells backpacks and luggage now. And so they have the Peak Design everyday backpack. That's their most recommended, most bought, most famous product that everybody loves. So there is no chance that if someone buys it, they don't like it. And so they recommend that as the first purchase that you make with the brand. I recommend checking out the Peak Design experience. I think they have a great shopping experience. The next one I'm going to talk about is the halo effect, which essentially happens if you put something on a pedestal. And so how to do that in a digital experience is by creating a category purely for top rated products. This is where you are bringing all of your bestsellers and top rated products in a single place. I wanted to show this example because this is a poor execution of how that has to be done. It is not a good execution. They've created a category. There's a drop down which has top rated clothes, top rated dresses, jackets, jeans, etc., etc. But first, the first two words of this entire category don't matter. Everybody is going to read the third one and then take a decision. It's not visualized. There's too much text. There's too much confusion. Also, on the right, if you see what's happening, it's our number one dress, number one jacket, number one jean, number one pant, and so on. But there's so much explanation there, right? The G&E Maxi, it really doesn't matter if you call it Opal Swing Denim Jacket. It really doesn't matter. It's a denim jacket, and that's what matters. So this is creating too much cognitive load. It's making decision-making harder. But again, the halo effect is a success here where they're creating a category just for top-rated products and they're doing that. Isolation, another very important effect that you have to consider, just one product. So reserve a page, a part of your homepage to show them just one product, which is high-rated, is an easy decision. And try and do that. I recommend doing this in the second or the third fold. It really works as far as trying to push people into the funnel goes. They want to learn more about the product. I also recommend that you learn a few things from here. So if you see what's happening here is the premium garment duffel, 45 liter. They could have just called it the duffel 45 liter. So there's that angle. Second, they have about 5 colors. So if anybody wants to see more colors, they would probably go and look at the other information. Also upgraded bestseller, extra features. So the images become the obvious next thing you will engage with. So the gallery is rich with images, lots of different options. This is actually a fantastic bag. It opens up fully like a coat pocket. So there's a lot that's happening, and I think it's very well executed. If this is an isolation they've created on the homepage, it's very well executed. This is another very interesting is where you try and use identity affirmation to create a sale. So a high percentage sale for a specific consumer segment, right? Now I'll give you an example of what happens when this happens with me. For example, you could do, hey, 30% all off on all XXLs, right? And so that creates instant likability. I'm like, hey, fantastic, right? This is exactly who I am. In this case, this example, they're doing kind of 60% off for people who travel. And if you look at the imagery, if you look at the categorization, it's for people who travel. Now that brand might do more things than just travel related products, but they've created a specific collection to appeal to a specific ICP or ideal customer profile or customer type. And this goes a long way because, of course, you have to research. You make sure that you are appealing to somebody that is truly your customer instead of just creating like a random category. So think it through and do an identity affirming sale, which adds value to whoever it is that you're trying to appeal to. Making recommendations desirable. So, the thing is that recommendations and personalization are a thing of the past. Not everybody can actually implement something like that. It's not hard to do and so on. So the thing is that you want to make sure that you highlight the ones that truly matter. I think this whole subscription experience center stage is the most obvious one where you highlight the most selling or the best selling. But really what you're also trying to do is upselling. Because when you say that something's the best selling, it's the most recommended, it's the most complete, you're doing two things. You're recommending something that sells more, but you're also telling them that you're not supposed to go for the cheapest option. The cheapest option is not for you. And I feel that converting somebody for a higher tier in your product, whether it's a premium option, a premium subscription, or a premium version of your product, it would only happen if you make the basic version look a little bad. And so the center stage effect allows you to do that. You essentially establish that, hey, the premium version is the better selling one, and that's what most people buy. And so if you're going for basic, you are essentially not most people. And you're not unique as well because you're going for the basic one. So I think we all know what that means. Use a quiz to drive interest in the site-by sale. I think really simple suggestion, but I just want to double click on this in a way that I feel quiz in general is under leveraged. And so this is a quiz in quiz form where you go on there and you're trying to look for a mattress. So you're talking about, do you have backache? What kind of weight do you have? Do you sleep cold or do you sleep hot? And all of those things. But the more important aspect here is you're getting the person to commit to something or narrow their search down. So one of the things that I think you can do if you don't want to do a quiz like this is just create a product selection wizard that allows you to tier people down into a narrowed down journey. So for example, if you're doing cell phones, I'm just giving you the cell phone example because it is easier. What kind of phones do you prefer? I prefer larger screens or smaller screens, Android or iOS, right? What kind of budget did you have in mind? Do you have a color preference? Do you have a preference for 5G versus 4G? How often do you change your phone, right? So, and then you can just lead them in to what the best option is. How important is camera for you, for example, right? So if somebody says, hey, I want something below $700-800, should have a decent camera, Apple or Android, it really doesn't matter to me. You would probably send them to a couple of options. And that's what a quiz allows you to do, is that it allows you to let the customer elaborate on what they want and then give them a solution that really matters. So I think that also allows you to drive more attention to the sales that might be running on the site. So that is another added value. I think we're already on 20. I might be able to gift some minutes back to you all. If you have any questions, please start thinking of them and put them in the chat or the Q&A section. I would love to take questions once we're done with this because we will have enough time to do it. And I'm going to talk about the next 5 things. Rounding up reviews as compelling stats. I think this is a really big one. And I'll give you a very small example of this, although there is an example right in front of us right now. But the simple example I want to give you is when buying fashion online, the biggest anxiety or biggest constraint that we see people have is size, because for some reason that's not standardized. So Marks and Spencer's XL in UK is not equal to an American Eagle XL, is not equal to any other XL, a Levi XL, and so that creates anxiety, that creates lack of confidence in purchase. And so what if you just simply said, hey, 98% people report picking the right size when they picked one size lower, right? And so you can essentially use these statistics and precise numbers to guide the customer in a confident way. So in this case, for example, 97% reported reduced puffiness, 87% reduced dark circles, and so on. So you are being extremely specific and you are triggering what is called a precision bias, right? I also want to give you another hack, which is odd numbers are more trustworthy than even numbers. So use odd numbers more often. Make your secondary CTA equally powerful. Learn more, shop all of those things really are okay, but you should really frame your options well. If you are doing just one CTA, you are essentially making the customer make a yes or no decision. Whereas if you're doing two CTAs, you are helping the customer make if this or this or that decision, which is obviously the better one because you're trying to keep them in. So I think it's a very simple tactic. What you're doing is option farming. You can influence the shopper decision by attributing some kind of an emphasis to something. And so I feel it really matters, when you're trying to do shop all plans or shop plans on sale or clearance or, travelers, shop for travelers, like the categorization that I showed you earlier. All of those are great options. The other thing is if you still want to do clearance and sale, I feel a lot of people don't create enough trust in the sale by doing sales of too many products together, and there's nothing that's out of stock. So I think the number one way of creating a lot of trust in your clearance sale is by having 70% products that are sold out in the sale. That's the number one thing you could do as an online shop to create trust in the sale you're running. If you don't have sold out products, then you're not a big enough store. So I feel that goes a long, long way. I also think that there is a reason. I'll just give you an insight. Apple iPhone sales have fallen this year, right? So think about it for a second. For the last 4 years, Apple has sold the same number of iPhones. It's $205 billion per year in sales from iPhones, flat for the last 4 years. However, every September they launch a new iPhone, and in October it is sold out all over the world. Do you think Apple is not smart enough to think of having enough supply to cater to the sale they're going to get? I think so. I think that's definitely not possible. So the sale is not growing and they still can't figure out their supply chain and they still go out of stock. I think there's something fishy. So my point is sold out is a very, very important psychological lever and you have to use it to your advantage, especially if you're running sales a lot. So people don't want to lose out on things and you might trigger some loss aversion and you might get those conversions that you're really looking to get. The other thing is using questions really well across the site. I feel anybody who has done quality A/B testing and experiments, and we do a lot of that, uses copy to guide the user instead of pushing the user. So a question book goes a long way, and it also tells you if people care about the things you think you're solving for them. So in this case, for example, it just simply says, is Elite right for you or is Hybrid right for you? And then it kind of gives you a comparison. But really the important part here is, can you create some questions or some information that is relevant to only a set of your customers? And so that goes a long way. I have another example similar to this, but really you're trying to do this. I recently spoke to a company that does equipment for pizza chefs. And so that's extremely specific, but they're trying to break into household market and home goods and all of that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I recommended was, hey, you know what? Most of the people that you're trying to sell this to are not nerds. They're not pizza nerds. They really don't know this is for them. Why don't you just create literature and plug it everywhere across the experience to educate them? It would go a long way. And I think that worked wonders. And so yes, I think questions are a powerful way to engage the customer and take them to the next level. We are on our second last item, leverage in-group bias. So essentially, you are trying to psychologically force people in some way, not force rather, but psychologically group people in certain sets to create some kind of bias, right? So it's not manipulative, but it's kind of fun in the way that you're trying to capture preferences or behaviors by putting people in groups. For example, uh, vegans are a group of people, right? And so they have certain sets of values and principles that they feel strongly about. And so if you are shopping on, say, Whole Foods, and you have an entire section for vegan meat, all vegan meat, essentially the fake meat, or if you have a section for vegan snacks, you are making the experience better for them, but also you are grouping people into sets. So you're saying all the vegans can go in this direction, non-vegans can go in this direction. So you're making life easy for both. So in this case, for coffee loyalty, I'm loyal to my flavor. I'm ready. I'm okay to switch it up. I always try a new one. And so what that does for you is it allows you to recommend products on the basis of the kind of bias somebody has when they're shopping with you. So I also think it creates more trust in the brand, because if people think that you are understanding them well, they will trust you more. They will trust your authority, right? So that's another one. The last one is gamification of tiered discounts. So I had spoken about tiered discounts earlier. The last one I want to talk about is gamification. So what you really see is happening here is if you bundle products, you get a higher tier. So first two is 10% off, the third is 20 plus free shipping, the fourth is 25%, and so on. We call this perpetual fluency, where essentially we are trying to create a very clear visual structure to make it easy for customers to realize the perceived value, the value, as well as, generally speaking, the kind of value they would earn if they were to follow the journey, follow the experience that we're having them follow. So that goes a long way as well. So I think there are many ways to gamify discounts. You could do it basis transactions. You could do it for bundling. You could do it for the type of product they're choosing, or even the dollar spend that they have with you. But I think most brands rely on template loyalty apps and that kind of stuff to do something like this. I think it's worthwhile to think of something that is either unique to your brand, or at least unique to the customers that are shopping with you. When they see you, they should be able to see that as a differentiator at least. So that should really stand out. But yes, these are some of the unconventional and underrated conversion optimization ideas for 8-figure e-commerce stores. The intention, as I said, was to expose you to some fresh ideas and also talk about some psychological triggers that make them worthwhile. So in a lot of cases, we see websites doing these things, but they're not thinking of the psychology that goes behind implementing something as simple as a bundled sale, or something as simple as tiered discounts, or just a sale for that matter, right? I wanted to think about these ideas in relevance to your own business, and I'm happy to take questions. So if you have any questions, please let me know. You can also put it in the Q&A section, and I'm happy to answer them. I have already answered one live, and yeah, I'm just going to go through the chat here. Okay, we don't have anything in the chat yet. There are a couple of DMs to me. So do you have any app recommendations for? So I can't recommend any apps for loyalty. There are apps like Smile and a few other decent ones. But I think it's interesting to know that apps are one size fits all. So I would recommend you try it, but before you plug anything up and start it, because people are going to start opting into it, loyalty apps generally want to keep them with you as a customer for a long time. So a lot of loyalty signups will mean you will find it hard to move from one place to another. So just look through the journey, take a trial, maybe think through how it will get implemented possibly, and that would really greatly help you. I have answered another question on chat just now for somebody else. So I'm not getting chats on everyone. I'm getting them as DMs. Any other questions, folks? Another question, the strategy of all. I think it's really about you picking the strategies that you feel will work for them, work for you. depending on the industry you're from, you will have to really think through. So I want you to think of them as principles and just high level ideas, and how you customize them and implement them for your business is something that is purely up to you. There are, of course, industries where these might not work. And so you have to kind of pick and choose. And that's why A/B testing is important. That's why we do more than 10,000 experiments a year. So if you would like, I'm happy to, an offer that I would like to give everybody attending this webinar is, if you would like for us to audit your site and look at the funnel and find problems or pitfalls or where you lose customers and revenue, we are happy to do that. So I will email everyone after this webinar. You will get an email for feedback as well. And please feel free to get back, and I'll be more than happy to make sure we arrange a comprehensive audit of your site's experience. Any other questions, folks? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. The recording as well as the document will be available, although not very soon. So the moment it is ready, we will send it over. Thanks so much for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And I will see you in the next one with something more interesting. If you have any areas of problems or anything that you want us to do a webinar on talk about, please don't forget to tell me about that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.